Hey guys, I'm here at Glenoaks Blvd, one of the busiest thoroughfares of the entire city of Los Angeles. Please join me in this episode of History Street Smarts, where we explore not only the history, but the trivia, personal stories, and some of mine as well. When people mention the name Los Angeles, they always think of Beverly Hills, Hollywood, the beaches. Yet, people don't focus much on the expansive San Fernando Valley. In this episode of History Street Smarts, we are going to explore one of the most well-known streets in the valley, Glenoaks Blvd. Driving through Glenoaks, you see a wide variety of homes, businesses, schools, parks. Upon looking at the name, you may think it's named after a person. The San Fernando Valley is filled with lots of streets that have been renamed, replaced, or simply overtaken by various establishments. Glenoaks Blvd took over the former Ethel Street and Gilbert Street in Glendale, as well as 4th Street in Burbank. During the 1920s, developers wanted to expand the area from Glendale to connecting Pasadena to other places in Los Angeles. A real estate developer named Glenoaks Inc., Walter P. Story, and Guy M. Rush came to check out these lots. The name Glenoaks comes from the glen in Glendale, meaning valley, and the oak came from the abundant amount of oak trees which were growing along the route. It was announced in October of 1925 that San Fernando and Burbank will be connected by a 100-foot boulevard to be known as Glenoaks, by virtue of a resolution passed by the Burbank trustees, which provides for that thoroughfare through this city. This new path would lighten the traffic coming from the San Fernando Road. Our journey begins with the outskirts of Sylmar, California. Glenoaks starts right here, at the corner of Foothill and Glenoaks, at this mobile home community called Oak Ridge, not to be confused by the famous Jack Oakey estate in Northridge. This stretch of road goes up until this semi-secluded golf course on top of the Verdugo Mountains. Hey guys, this is definitely a unique spot where I want to talk about on Glenoaks Blvd. It doesn't only land on Glenoaks Blvd, it actually lands on several areas in Sylmar, Pacoima, Lakeview Terrace. But here I'd like to give you a little bit of an exploration of the Hansen Dam history and why it's important in our community. There's a lot of horses just galloping around. There's also a lot of music going by because they actually use the park that's next to this sign for parties and just for people to have a fun time. I'd say it's a little bit of Mexican culture in a way, with people selling kind of fruit on the side and selling kind of rides if you want to ride horses, even ponies, and there's goats. I don't know if that's in part because of the fires that happened recently here, but that's the Hansen Dam for you now. Just a melting pot of different cultures and just different people just celebrating this land together. Our first stop on Glenoaks goes through the Foothill Boulevard and touches the famous Hansen Dam. This notable aqueduct story started back with a couple of ranchers named Homer and Marie Hansen. They owned a farm in the area full of horses, vegetation, and other livestock. In 1938, Los Angeles was dealt with one of the biggest weather disasters it had ever known. There was massive rain which resulted in the city flooding, especially in the San Fernando Valley. The LA River was much more wild and not properly constructed. Anything within its path was destined to be obliterated. Resulting in the city's damages caused Los Angeles to construct proper water routes and aqueducts, which resulted in the Hansen Dam. In 1939, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers acquired the land and named it after the farmers who owned it. Construction of the dam started in 1939 and completed in 1940, which would help stifle any future floods. This dam supplies a great amount of Los Angeles' water supply. A recreation center was in consideration in 1946 because the Hansen Dam became such a popular tourist destination. In 1952, the city of Los Angeles opened up Holiday Lake as a place for visitors to swim, fish, and just enjoy nature's beauty. Over time, the lake had to be reduced as there was too much sediment accumulation. In 1983, it was filled up and abandoned. This area was also used as a place for the public to learn about the beauty of nature, the importance of conservation, and helping maintain a biodiversity within the area. There is a lake, a smaller swimming area, trailers for horse riding, and walking. During the 1980s, the dam was starting to get filled as a result of the neglect of debris such as sand and plants falling into it. Rather than cleaning it out, the Corps proposed to build a taller dam. This did not pass, as they were responsible for the maintenance of the dam. Because the lake was supposed to only last for 50 years, according to the Corps engineer Terry Wotherspoon. By the mid-1980s, excavation projects started to clear up the sediment debris. With all of these combined efforts, the Hansen Dam has become a staple of the San Fernando Valley. There's a small hiking trail around the dam that you are able to see such a beautiful landscape of the valley. Another building that was recently built in the Hansen Dam landscape is the Los Angeles branch of the Discovery Cube Museum. Hey guys, I'm here at the Discovery Cube. This is a place where I feel that needs special attention. Now it's a great place for kids to visit and a great place for kids to enjoy themselves, learn about science and everything, and just about the environment. But it has a much more dark and sinister history that I feel there should definitely be some kind of plaque around here. This is the spot, unfortunately, where the Rodney King beating happened. There's a lot of people walking through here that have no idea. I had no idea until my research of Glenoaks Blvd. It really is a fascinating location because you're here and it's very quaint. There's a lot of families around. There's a lot of horses just riding around the area, and you would never suspect it, honestly. It's very peaceful up here. They're under construction right now. I went inside just to see if there was any kind of plaque on the outside. I felt I should ask about it in there. Definitely it's supposed to be a kind of happy spot. This is a place where kids can discover the importance of science and can show how people can make a difference with engineering, science, math, and technology. This museum was actually the site of something much more sinister. This was the site of one of the main catalysts of the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Rodney King, a 25-year-old African-American male who was in a high-speed chase with police, which ended up him being tasered and beaten right here. This beating was recorded by a bystander, which eventually erupted in one of the most tragic events of Los Angeles history. Luckily, about 25 years after that unfortunate event, there is a much more positive place that can inspire kids of all ages to influence the world for the better. It was very weird for me to walk through these gates, just knowing the dark history in this area. I'm glad they revamped it and made it to a much more positive one, but you would never imagine. Now this is quite a unique story indeed. According to the Pacoima Historical Society, there was a community full of horses that were run by black cowboys. African Americans actually had such a great influence on the small city of Pacoima. Back in the 1930s to the 1960s, this more obscure city in the San Fernando Valley was one of the most diverse cities in the entire valley. Not only Latinos moved to Pacoima, but Asians as well, as black people were allowed to purchase property in this area. People were attracted to this blue-collar neighborhood from close business plants such as Lockheed. Post-World War II, there was a housing development called the Joe Louis homes. Joe Louis, the famous boxer, never had anything to do with these homes. The reason why they named it after the famous athlete was to attract more African Americans into these neighborhoods. This neighborhood bordered from Van Nuys Boulevard to Fillmore and the star of this episode, Glenoaks Blvd. And it worked. A lot of black people ended up buying up the homes in this area. One of those residents was a man named Tim Morris, known as Good Buddy. Before these homes started building around, he had plenty of horse stables by Fillmore Avenue. He eventually moved his horses over to the Hansen Dam area, as well as Rutgers Mortuary that is across the street from the Hansen Golf Course. These horses were always riding along the streets of Pacoima, including Glenoaks Blvd, and were constantly being trained for the neighboring movie studio. Equestrians were rented to some famous television shows, such as The Lone Ranger and Gunsmoke. Even in present day, you will not only in Pacoima, but neighboring Sylmar, see people riding their horses around town. In 1955, Glenoaks Blvd was extended through what was known as Whitman Hill, now Hansen Hill, to get passage to Hansen Dam and Sun Valley. Marvin Whitman of the Whitman Air Park had a house on the top of the hill, along with actor Andy Devine. Driving up Glenoaks was and is a busy street from Sylmar through Pacoima, filled with lots of markets, restaurants, businesses, homes. Glenoaks serves as a great thoroughfare to a lot of other busy streets. As we are moving further up, we see the Street Hollywood Way, which I will be covering in a future video. Here we see Cabrini, which connects to one of the most notable locations on Glenoaks, with one of the most fascinating histories, Woodbury University. Now, here we are at Woodbury University. The reason why I decided to take some time to talk about this school is because it's my alma mater, and so it definitely has a special place in my heart. Not only got my education here, but I have made some everlasting relationships just from this school. Small in size, but large in talent. A lot of talent indeed. Collection of professors, students, staff, just everyone at the school who helped prepare for my journey. When I was attending Woodbury, I didn't really think of the history as much as I should have. Of course, I respected the history from what other staff was telling me and what it used to be. But it wasn't until I fully thought about covering the school that I thought, let me just make a nice little piece or homage to the history of the school. Back in the 1880s, Los Angeles was an extremely sparse and rural place. People were moving west. With more people comes different opportunities for educating them and how to grow in their new environment. Introducing a man named Francis C. Woodbury, who was an educator in Heald's Business College in San Francisco. Woodbury wanted to open up a school where people can get a degree in a much more focused area, such as bookkeeping and telegraphy. He believed that education is for both men and women, which was pretty revolutionary for a time when women didn't have the right to vote yet. In 1884, Woodbury opened up the original location of Woodbury College at 316 North Main Street in downtown Los Angeles, eventually expanding to 226 South Spring Street. By then, Woodbury College had added focus to professional art, such as fashion and interior design. Woodbury moved again to 1027 Wilshire Boulevard, designed in a beautiful streamlined modern architecture building. This was the successful location for the university for the next 50 years. By 1987, Woodbury decided to move to the San Fernando Valley in the old Via Cabrini Academy. Back in the early 1900s, there was a woman named Frances Xavier Cabrini, who was the first U.S. citizen to become a saint for the Catholic Church. After being rejected to be a nun at various convents, she decided to open up her own. She wanted to help out those most in need, especially orphans. She eventually moved to Los Angeles in 1905. She was inspired to help abandoned children of the old pueblos, so she helped build an orphanage in Angelino Heights. She realized there was a bigger issue: the advent of tuberculosis amongst the poor. So she wanted to build a haven for girls to give them a life without fear. She was looking for a place that had affordable land, which eventually was the Verdugo Mountains between Burbank and Sun Valley. The sisters planted olive trees, as well as built a chapel of worship. Frances Cabrini passed away in 1917 at the age of 67. In 1946, she became a saint from the help of the other nuns of the chapel. Her former compound became the Via Cabrini Academy, a school for girls. This school then closed in 1970 after a decrease in enrollment, and then it briefly became the temporary campus for California Institute of the Arts, before moving to its permanent location in Valencia, California. In 1987, Woodbury moved and it made it the permanent campus, which is a private university with a very beautiful campus that still has plenty of history, including some connections to the Mother Cabrini days, including the beautiful library, which was the church. Here you can see the shape where the pews were placed, as well as the second floor where the choir actually sang. Their vocals would then be carried to the churchgoers, sitting for their service. You'll also see where the current cafeteria named Woody's is. Another beautiful connection to Francis Cabrini with the stone mural. And speaking of the mural, right next to it, the Fashion Design Building. There's something I was able to discover in a movie called Massacre at Central High. Here we have the bullies driving through the parking lot. What is quite unique about this scene is that there's this building with the circle in it. When I discovered it was on Woodbury University, I was on a trek to find out where. Then I encountered this hole and had the realization of how much these buildings had changed over the years. Another building that has changed is the location of it. A chapel from the grounds was threatened for demolition to build the Cabrini Villas, but they decided to move it from the compound. It was then moved to the St. Francis Xavier School in 1974. Now Woodbury has a mixture of buildings that not only connect back to the Cabrini days, but newer buildings that accommodate the needs of future students. Speaking of schools, everyone knows the iconic Hollywood High School, as I covered it in my Highland Avenue episode, where so many famous people have entered through their doors. But nobody mentions how many notable people have actually gone through the doors of Burbank High School. Opened in 1908, Burbank High School originally only had 42 students. The first high school was actually built on San Fernando Road and Grinnell Street. Before it was built, students actually would attend the Glendale Union High School district. With population growth, a new school was needed. In 1921, the new Burbank High School was built on 3rd Street and Fairmount Road. By 1922, the student body was 300. In 1925, they then added a swimming pool, library, and a tennis court to enhance the students' education. The original high school was then made into John Muir Intermediate School, which would accommodate 7th and 8th graders. It was torn down in 1927. Over the years, Burbank kept expanding to accommodate the growing population, including adding a 2-story building to increase the library that was originally built in 1935. Over the years, such amazing alumni have gone through these doors, such as director Timburton, the voice of Alice in Alice in Wonderland, Catherine Beaumont, Potsy from Happy Days, Anson Williams, and of course MGM sweetheart Debbie Reynolds. This school has also been a filming location for various TV shows and movies, including being the exterior of the Nickelodeon show Victorious. In the 1970s, there was a show called Policewoman. You see it here. In this 1960s film called Rebel Breed, here are various vintage shots of the school. It still accommodates the media city, and who knows what other students will cross these doors. Driving past this high school, there might be a studio that seems familiar, and that is Cartoon Network, one of the most iconic animation studios in California. All started by a man named Ted Turner, famous television magnate who purchased the entire MGM film library, as well as founded CNN. It all started in 1986, when Turner purchased the entire cartoon library of the MGM cartoons, such as Tom and Jerry, and the Fleischer Studios / Famous Studios Popeye cartoons. In 1991, he then purchased the Hanna-Barbera collection of cartoons. Since Turner had this collection, he then needed a network to serve as an outlet. That is where Cartoon Network was born in 1992. After the success of the 24-hour format with CNN News of showing news all day, Turner thought with Cartoon Network, he can work the same way, showcasing cartoons through a 24-hour format, the first of its kind. This also proved successful. The way they were broadcasted depended which studio the cartoons came from, with late at night showcasing the black and white cartoons of the Fleischer brothers. Luckily, by the end of 1994, Cartoon Network became the 5th most popular channel. The first original Cartoon Network show was The Moxie Show, then Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which was just a parody talk show to show the absurdity of reused animation. The latter of the two gained a cult following. In 1994, a separate entity named Cartoon Network Studios was opened to try to create more original cartoons. With the creation of What a Cartoon, which eventually spun off Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, I Am Weasel, Cow and Chicken, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and Ededdneddy. These cartoons were a nice medium and had a sense of rebellion versus what was being showcased at Nickelodeon. In 2000, Cartoon Network then opened their studio on Glenoaks Blvd and Palm Avenue to develop some of the most iconic Cartoon Network shows. In 2001, Adult Swim premiered a more adult-oriented block schedule with the show Home Movies as its premiere cartoon. With the new shows also comes the unfortunate removal of the original classics that started the channel. They were removed to a sister channel named Boomerang. From 2007 to 2009, Cartoon Network experimented with live-action shows which would not be so successful and universally panned, as this channel was supposed to be only about cartoons. Throughout the next 10 years, Cartoon Network would keep airing a variety of different cartoons like Regular Show and Adventure Time. In 2022, the iconic Glenoaks Blvd studio closed down and was consolidated with Warner Bros. Animation. We will see the future of Cartoon Network, as it was announced that it is not shutting down, but it was mentioned that it is going to be creating shows based on IPs. Nothing will ever make people forget about the iconic building on Glenoaks Blvd. Now here I'm standing in front of my old apartment. I've had a lot of good memories here, a lot of not so good memories as well, and it just made me realize how much I love the city and how much really want to go back. It's a nice medium of still being in the San Fernando Valley, but also being around the entertainment industry as well. And it has that small town feel, yet very urban as well. I used to live on Glenoaks Blvd, right by the thundering noises of cars passing by. Because the apartment was built in the early 70s, it didn't have proper cooling. There was no central AC, so in order to feel that nice cool breeze of those summer nights, I would open the window, which would bring such a delicious cool wind into my bedroom. I would also open the windows to the other rooms as well, so the cool breeze could flow. One day I was heading to the kitchen, then all of a sudden I heard an instant car crash. I looked outside and all I could see was another car getting hit. The original car that got hit had impacted into a tree and erupted into flames. Everyone in the neighborhood stormed out to see if everyone was okay. This accident resulted in several being pronounced dead on the scene, including a couple being injured. The 3 deceased were 19-year-old Natalie Mogadam, 20-year-old Jaden Johnson, and 21-year-old Serene Baker. Burbank, especially Glenoaks Blvd, has had a history of people racing on the streets. This has resulted in police stopping even more people from speeding, so that they can prevent these kind of tragedies from happening again. Now there is a painted memorial to commemorate those young kids. It just makes me think how quickly life can be taken away, and to be grateful for what we have. Now, I don't want to end the video on a negative note. This is a film appreciation channel after all, so I want to show you some filming locations associated with Glenoaks Blvd. In case you were wondering what other movies were shot on Glenoaks Blvd, here are a couple, and there may be a few that may surprise you, such as Happy Days, the pilot.
Okay, Richie, let's dig it out, Richie.
That away. Come on, Rich. I'm your best friend, you can tell me. How far'd you get?
All I'm saying is Mary Lou's a nice girl.
You didn't get very far.
Lay off, Potsy, will you?
Okay.
Hey.
Hey, Cunningham, Dorothy Rodwald says you did a little babysitting over the weekend.
Back to the Future, and McCambridge Park.
We're the pinheads.
1, 2, 3.
did you just too darn loud? Next, please.
As well as this classic film.
And I was about to give up. You're almost the
Next
last
time you're
one out.
thinking of a street to drive and take a stroll and want to avoid the freeway, consider Glenoaks Blvd. You might discover something unexpected with the San Fernando Valley street. Thank you so much everybody for watching this episode of Historical Street Smarts. Please tune in to the next episode. Thank you so much for your support and have a wonderful day everybody.